Welcome to Zoe Stories. My husband became the perfect housewife. The soft hum of the washing machine filled the apartment, blending with the rhythmic clatter of rain against the window. The scent of fresh lavender detergent hung in the air, mixing with the faint aroma of vanilla-scented candles Emma had insisted on buying. It was a scene of domestic tranquility, except for the man standing in the middle of the living room, heart pounding, fingers trembling as he smoothed out the hem of a pastel-pink apron over his waist. Nathan Parker never imagined himself in this position. At 32, he was a man defined by structure and routine. He worked as a financial analyst in a firm that valued discipline and precision. Every morning, he left their apartment in a crisp suit, carrying a sleek leather briefcase, his mind already immersed in stock reports and economic trends before he even reached the subway. His colleagues knew him as meticulous and reliable, qualities that had propelled him up the corporate ladder. But there was another side to Nathan, a secret buried beneath the weight of expectation and image. It had started as a curiosity, a fleeting thought he never dared voice. When he was younger, he had been drawn to the softness of fabrics, the elegance of feminine clothing, the way lipstick could change a face entirely. He told himself it was just admiration, until he caught himself imagining what it might feel like on his own skin. Years passed, and those thoughts never faded. At first, it was small things, a stolen moment in Emma's closet when she wasn't home, the brush of silk against his fingertips, the hesitant application of lip gloss in the dim glow of the bathroom mirror. Then, as his work stress increased, the act became more than just an indulgence. It was an escape. The moment he transformed, shedding his corporate shell and slipping into a world of delicate fabrics and soft hues, he felt something he never did at the office: peace. But it was dangerous. Nathan was married now. Emma was everything he could have wanted: smart, driven, beautiful. They had met in college, both studying economics, both determined to carve out successful careers. She had a sharp wit, a confidence that commanded attention, and an unwavering sense of ambition. Where Nathan was calculated, Emma was bold, pushing him out of his comfort zone, challenging him in ways that both frustrated and excited him. Their relationship had always been built on transparency. At least, that was what Emma believed. She trusted him. She saw him as a strong, dependable husband. She didn't know about the bags hidden in the back of their shared closet, filled with carefully chosen dresses and lingerie. She didn't know about the nights when he stayed home late, claiming to be swamped with work, just so he could indulge in the forbidden pleasure of slipping into something feminine. Nathan told himself it was harmless. A secret, yes, but one that didn't hurt anyone. But secrets had a way of unraveling. And as he stood there now, wearing a frilly pink apron over a fitted floral dress, he couldn't shake the fear that one day, Emma would find out. Today had been an accident. Emma had left early for a business trip, kissing him goodbye before rushing out the door with her suitcase in tow. Nathan had watched her go, waited until he heard the sound of the elevator, and then locked the door. His heart had raced with anticipation. He had the whole day to himself. Dressed in his usual business attire, he had gone through the motions, making coffee, checking emails, until the urge became too strong to resist. One moment, he was sitting on the couch, and the next, he was in their bedroom, carefully pulling a dress from its hidden place in the closet. He had slipped into it with practiced ease, his hands steady as he zipped it up. A touch of foundation, a bit of mascara, just enough to make his features softer. He had been careful. He always was. But as he stood in the kitchen now, stirring a pot of soup on the stove, a chill ran down his spine. What if Emma came back early? She wasn't supposed to. Her flight wasn't until tomorrow, but the thought lingered, pressing against his ribs like a vice. He glanced at the clock.
Still time.
And yet, the fear remained. Nathan knew he couldn't keep doing this forever. Secrets like these had a way of surfacing, and when they did, they brought destruction in their wake. But for now, just for today, he allowed himself to exist in this fragile bubble of stolen moments. Because for all the fear, for all the risks, he had never felt more himself. The apartment was quiet, save for the occasional drip of rain outside and the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the kitchen wall. The stillness wrapped around Nathan like a cocoon, heightening every sound, every breath. He stood there, gripping the wooden spoon as he stirred the soup, his heart racing, not from fear, but from the intoxicating rush of existing in this secret world, if only for a few stolen hours. The silk of the floral dress caressed his skin with every movement, the fitted bodice hugging his torso in a way that felt oddly reassuring. The apron he wore was a delicate touch, tied neatly around his waist, transforming him from a corporate man into something else entirely, a housewife. The very word sent a strange thrill through him. It wasn't just about the clothes. It was the entire persona, the idea of slipping into a softer, more nurturing role, a stark contrast to the rigid masculinity he performed every day. Yet beneath the excitement, a familiar anxiety lurked. What if Emma found out? Nathan had always been cautious. He had strict rules for himself. Never crossdress when there was even the slightest chance of being interrupted, never leave a trace behind, always ensure every bit of makeup was wiped away before she came home. But today was different. Today, he had given in too easily. Maybe it was the stress from work, the endless pressure to be the perfect husband, the perfect employee, the perfect man. Maybe it was the way Emma had left in such a rush, giving him an entire day of freedom he hadn't expected. Whatever the reason, he had let his guard down. And now, standing in the kitchen, fully dressed, fully transformed, he felt dangerously exposed. The ritual of transformation. Rewind to an hour ago. Nathan had been sitting on the edge of their bed, staring at the closet, his pulse hammering. The moment Emma left, he had tried to resist the urge. He had told himself he would just check his emails, watch some TV, maybe read a book. But the thought had slithered into his mind, wrapping around him like a whisper. Just for a little while. He had stood up before he could stop himself, crossing the room with a mix of excitement and dread. The closet door creaked as he opened it, revealing a row of Emma's dresses. His fingers traced the fabrics, moving past the ones he knew wouldn't fit him until he reached the hidden garment bag in the far corner. Unzipping it felt like unlocking another version of himself. Inside was a carefully curated selection of clothes, pieces he had bought in secret, always with cash, always from places far enough from home that no one would recognize him. A soft pink dress with delicate lace trim. A deep burgundy blouse paired with a flowing skirt. And his favorite, a pale blue floral dress, cinched at the waist, flattering but modest. His hands trembled as he pulled it out. He didn't need a mirror to know how it would look. He had worn it before, had memorized the way it draped over his frame, the way the skirt flared just enough to give him the illusion of curves. Dressing was both a ritual and a rebellion. Each movement was deliberate. First, he shed his usual attire, folding his work clothes neatly, a habit drilled into him from years of order and discipline. Then came the lingerie. He had learned early on that the foundation mattered. Slipping into the satin panties sent a shiver down his spine, the fabric unfamiliar, yet achingly right. The matching bralette was snug against his chest, and while it didn't create much shape, it still made him feel different. More real. The dress followed, sliding over his body effortlessly. The moment the zipper reached the nape of his neck, he felt it, the shift. He was no longer Nathan, the disciplined husband, the analytical professional. He was something softer, something freer. And then the finishing touches. He moved to the vanity, where he had a small, secret stash of makeup tucked away in the back of a drawer. Just the basics: foundation, mascara, a soft pink lipstick. He applied each with practiced precision, his hands steady despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. The final stroke of mascara framed his eyes in a way that made his reflection unrecognizable. A stranger stared back at him. No, not a stranger. A version of himself that had always existed, hidden beneath layers of expectation. Nathan exhaled, pressing his palms against the vanity, grounding himself. He could stop now. Wipe off the makeup, change back, pretend none of this had happened. But then a thought. What if he didn't just dress up? What if, for just a few hours, he played the role completely? A housewife. The idea was absurd, and yet, it sent an electric thrill through him. He had spent so long keeping this part of himself locked away. What would it feel like to embrace it fully, if only for today? The decision was made before he could talk himself out of it. Now, standing in the kitchen, stirring soup in a frilly apron, he felt both powerful and exposed. The domestic act was strangely soothing, as if slipping into this role allowed him to leave all his other worries behind. He hummed softly to himself, swaying slightly as he moved between the stove and the countertop. It was easy to pretend. He imagined Emma coming home to this, him waiting by the door, dinner ready, a gentle smile on his lips. The image was ridiculous, but instead of embarrassment, he felt something dangerously close to longing. Could she ever accept this side of him? No. The thought hit like a slap. Emma had always been open-minded, but this was different. She loved him for who she thought he was, a strong, capable man, her equal. If she ever saw him like this, her perception of him would shatter. The fear was enough to pull him back to reality. He turned off the stove, untying the apron with hurried fingers. This had been a mistake. He needed to change back before he got too comfortable, before he did something reckless. Then the sound. A key in the lock. Nathan froze. His breath caught in his throat as he whipped around, eyes wide with panic. No. No, no, no. The doorknob twisted. Emma wasn't supposed to be home. His mind raced. There was no time to run to the bedroom, no time to strip out of the dress, no time to wipe off the makeup. The door swung open. And there she stood. Emma. Dripping from the rain, suitcase in hand, eyes locking onto him in an instant. The world stopped. Nathan couldn't breathe. Emma's gaze traveled over him, his dress, the makeup, the lipstick-stained rim of the wine glass on the counter. Silence. Then, Nathan? Her voice was barely a whisper, but the weight of it crushed him. His stomach twisted, his vision blurred. This was it. He had been caught. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Nathan could feel his heartbeat pounding in his ears, so loud it drowned out everything else. Emma's suitcase was still clutched in her hand, droplets of rainwater pooling beneath it. Her expression was unreadable, shock, confusion, something else lurking just beneath the surface. Nathan, she said again, slower this time. His throat was dry. His mouth opened, but no words came out. What could he say? That this wasn't what it looked like? Because it was exactly what it looked like. He was standing in the middle of their kitchen, wearing a floral dress, his makeup still fresh, his body trembling with adrenaline. There was no lie that could undo this moment. He swallowed, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma, Her gaze flicked over him again, taking in every detail. The dress. The apron, now carelessly draped over the counter. The wine glass. The soft curl of his mascaraed lashes. Nathan watched her, waiting for the explosion. The anger, the disgust. But it didn't come. Instead, Emma took a slow step forward, setting the suitcase down. How long? She asked. It took him a moment to understand. His fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. How long? She gestured vaguely toward him. How long have you been doing this? He wanted to lie. Desperately. He wanted to tell her this was a joke, a stupid one-time thing. But he couldn't. The weight of the years pressed down on him. The stolen moments, the secrecy, the guilt. It all came rushing forward in an unstoppable tide. Years, he admitted finally, his voice barely audible. Since before we got married. Emma inhaled sharply, but still, no anger. Just an unreadable intensity in her eyes. Nathan's stomach twisted. I never wanted to keep it from you, he said quickly, his voice cracking. I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid. Afraid of what? He let out a bitter laugh. Of this. Of you looking at me like you don't even know who I am. Her brows furrowed, and something flickered in her expression, something almost like hurt. I do not know you, she said carefully. I don't understand. Neither did he. Before he could respond, another sound cut through the room. The doorbell. Both of them jumped. Nathan's entire body seized. No. No, 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 not now. Emma's eyes widened. Are you expecting someone? No, he said quickly. His mind was racing. Who could it be? A neighbor? A delivery? He hadn't ordered anything, had he? The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Nathan's breath came fast and shallow. His hands were shaking. He wasn't thinking straight. He needed to move, to get out of this dress, to wipe away the makeup before whoever was outside saw him like this. But Emma moved first. Without a word, she stepped toward the door. Emma, wait. Too late. She swung it open. A sharp gasp. Nathan's blood turned to ice. Standing in the doorway was Emily, Emma's younger sister. She was holding a takeout bag, her mouth open in shock. Her eyes flicked from Emma to Nathan, and then to the dress. Oh, Emily said, blinking rapidly. I wasn't expecting. She stopped, visibly struggling for words. Am I interrupting something? Nathan felt like his soul had left his body. Emma stiffened. A moment passed, one that felt like an eternity. Then, suddenly, she stepped aside, her face blank. Come in. Nathan nearly choked. What? Emily hesitated. Are you? Come in, Emma repeated, her voice firm. Nathan wanted to disappear. He wanted to sink into the floor and never be seen again. But Emily was already stepping inside, carefully closing the door behind her. The silence was unbearable. Emily cleared her throat. So, she gestured vaguely. This is new. Nathan's face burned. Emma didn't move. She was staring at him, something unreadable in her expression. Nathan, she said finally, her voice eerily calm. Go sit down. His stomach dropped. What? Sit down. Nathan hesitated, his pulse roaring in his ears. But something in her tone made it clear there was no room for argument. He moved stiffly, sinking onto the couch, feeling more exposed than he ever had in his life. His hands were clenched in his lap, his nails digging into his palms. Emma followed, but she didn't sit. She stood in front of him, arms crossed. Emily stayed near the door, awkwardly shifting her weight. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Emma exhaled slowly, pressing her fingers against her temples. I need you to tell me everything, she said. Right now. Nathan swallowed hard. He could still lie. He could still try to salvage this, to minimize the damage. But one look at Emma's face told him it was too late. The truth was already out. And there was no going back. I don't know where to start, Nathan admitted, his voice hollow. Emma studied him for a long moment. Then start with why. Why? It was such a simple question, but it felt impossible to answer. Why did he do this? Why did he feel the need to put on dresses, to wear makeup, to step into this other version of himself? I don't know, he said truthfully. I've always felt drawn to it. And when I do it, I feel. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I feel like I can breathe. Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. So, you feel like yourself when you're dressed like this? Nathan hesitated. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe this is just another part of me. One I've spent years pretending didn't exist. Emily, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke up. And you never told Emma because... Nathan let out a bitter laugh. Because I was terrified she'd look at me exactly the way she's looking at me right now. Emma flinched. Just slightly. But Nathan saw it. He immediately felt sick. I didn't mean, he stopped himself, dragging a hand down his face. I don't know what I'm saying. Emma exhaled sharply, then turned to Emily. Can you give us a minute? Emily looked between them, then nodded. Yeah, sure. I'll, be in the kitchen. She slipped away, leaving them alone. Emma finally sat down across from him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Nathan felt like he was on the verge of unraveling completely. Then Emma reached out, hesitantly, and took his hand. His breath hitched. I don't know how to process this, she admitted. I don't know what this means for us. Nathan felt like crying. But, she continued, her voice softening, I don't want to lose you. His eyes burned. You don't. Emma shook her head. No. But I need to understand. Nathan swallowed the lump in his throat. I don't know if I understand it myself. Emma squeezed his hand. Then let's figure it out together. And for the first time in years, Nathan felt like he wasn't alone. Nathan sat motionless, Emma's hand still wrapped around his. His heart was pounding so hard he could barely hear his own thoughts. He should have felt relief, should have been grateful that she hadn't screamed, hadn't stormed out, hadn't told him to pack his things and leave. But instead, all he felt was dread. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. Emma's grip was firm but unreadable. Her face was calm, but her eyes were a storm. A hurricane of emotions Nathan couldn't decipher. The silence stretched. Then Emma inhaled deeply and pulled her hand away. I need time. Nathan felt something inside him crack. Time? She nodded, standing up. This is the lot. And I don't want to say something I'll regret. A shiver ran down his spine. So, what does that mean? What happens now? Emma stared at him for a long moment before shaking her head. I don't know. Nathan wanted to beg her to stay, to sit back down and talk, to work through this right now before the space between them grew too wide to cross. But he could already feel her slipping away. Emma turned, heading toward the hallway. Where are you going? She paused, her hand on the bedroom door. I need to think. Then she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Nathan sat frozen, the sound of the latch clicking shut echoing in his mind. That was it? She didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't even ask him to explain more.
She just walked away.
A lump formed in his throat as he stared at the door, half expecting her to come back out any second. But she didn't. The minutes crawled by. The house felt eerily silent. Finally, unable to take it anymore, Nathan stood and began pacing. His mind was a mess, replaying every second of their conversation, analyzing every expression Emma had made. Was she disgusted? Was she angry? Was she going to leave him? A sickening thought hit him. What if she was calling someone right now? Telling her family, her friends? What if, in the morning, everyone knew? His stomach twisted.
No.
No, Emma wouldn't do that.
Would she?
Just then, the sound of a door opening snapped him out of his thoughts. Nathan's head whipped toward the hallway, hope flickering in his chest. But it wasn't Emma. It was Emily. She stepped out of the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes sharp. We need to talk. Nathan swallowed. Emily, Sit down. The authority in her voice sent a chill through him. He obeyed without thinking, lowering himself back onto the couch. Emily sat across from him, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then finally she sighed. Look, I don't care about the dress. Or the makeup. That's not what's bothering me. Nathan blinked. It's not. Emily shook her head. What bothers me is that you've been lying to Emma for years. His throat tightened. I didn't, he stopped. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I believe you, Emily said. But that doesn't change the fact that you did. Nathan flinched. Emily leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. Do you even know what she's thinking right now? No, his voice was barely a whisper. Emily studied him for a moment, then exhaled sharply. She loves you. That much is obvious. But she's also confused, hurt, and probably wondering if she even knows the man she married. Nathan's stomach dropped. Look, Emily continued. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But you need to figure out what you want. Nathan looked away. I don't even know anymore. Emily frowned. Nathan. He swallowed, his hands trembling. If I could take it all back, if I could make it so she never found out. Would you? Nathan froze. The question cut through him like a knife. Would he? For years, he had dreaded this moment. The moment someone found out. The moment the life he built came crashing down. But now that it had happened, he wasn't sure he wanted to go back. A part of him, no, a large part of him, felt relief. The weight of secrecy had been crushing him for so long, and now, for the first time, it was gone. He looked at Emily, his pulse racing. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know if I can go back. Emily didn't look surprised. She nodded, as if she had expected that answer. Before she could respond, a soft sound interrupted them. A door opening. Nathan turned his head so fast his neck ached. Emma stood in the hallway, her face unreadable. She had changed out of her work clothes. She looked calm.
Too calm.
His stomach twisted. Emma? She took a deep breath. I have a question. Nathan braced himself. Okay. Emma's eyes locked onto his. If I asked you to stop, would you? The air left his lungs. Silence. The weight of her question pressed down on him, suffocating. He wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell her he would do anything for her, that he would shove this part of himself back into the dark if it meant keeping her. But he couldn't, because for the first time in his life, he knew, deep down, that this wasn't something he could turn off. Emma must have seen the answer in his face before he even said it. Her expression flickered, pain flashing in her eyes. Nathan's voice cracked. I don't know if I can. Emma inhaled sharply, then turned away. Okay. Nathan's breath hitched. Okay. I need time, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know if time will fix this. His heart clenched. Emma, please. She shook her head, her shoulders trembling. I need to be alone right now. And with that, she walked away. Nathan didn't move, didn't breathe. The finality in her voice felt like a knife to the chest. He had told the truth. And now he might lose everything because of it. But was losing Emma the price of finally being himself? Or was there still hope? What happens next? Was this the end of Nathan and Emma's marriage? Could Emma accept this new reality? Or would it tear them apart? And if she left, would Nathan regret his choice? Let me know in the comments what you think Emma will do next. Would you forgive Nathan? Or was his secret too much to handle? Stay tuned for the next chapter. Things are just getting started.